Good afternoon and welcome back to our TOB Wednesday Audiences Facebook Live walk through the Catechesis on Human Love and the Divine Plan by St. John Paul II. That was a mouthful. I am Bill Donahue, Content and Curriculum Specialist here at the Theology of the Body Institute, and it's a pleasure to have this informal meandering through the Catechesis Theology of the Body with you over the last month or so, couple of months. We are picking up with audience number 10 today, and then we'll segue into audience number 11 of John Paul's epic catechesis. To pick up on the episodes we've already covered, simply visit our YouTube channel, Theology of the Body Institute, and you can see them there. Our intention, again, is to pick out, in a kind of Lectio Divina fashion, certain lines, certain insights, and phrases from John Paul II, to understand this great teaching on the meaning of the human body, on the meaning of human identity, and the call, the vocation of the human person, which is ultimately to love, to form communion, to form unity, to image God, who is communion, God who is unity in the visible world. That's our beautiful call. So thanks for tuning in. I'd like to, again, spend about 15 minutes or so, and we'll pick up with some of the rich content from audience number 10, which, again, was a couple of weeks ago since we last posted. This was delivered in November of 1979, and John Paul II is looking at our origin. Remember, in the epic teaching, Theology of the Body, he looks at our origin in Genesis, our history, which we are presently even living in, and our destiny, which is the future, where we're going as a human person, as a human family. We're under the meditation on original unity. Original solitude, original unity, and original nakedness make up the three phases of original man, this beginning that happened in Genesis chapters 1 and 2 before the fall. So we're still in that beautiful innocence in the beginning when God made us and said, "Behold, it is very good." So let me pick up a couple lines from audience number 10 before we segue into audience number 11. John Paul's been reflecting on Genesis chapter 2:23. Thus the man said, "This time she is flesh from my flesh and bone from my bones. She will be called woman because from man she has been taken." John Paul says that the knowledge of man passes through masculinity and femininity. Okay, nothing could be more clear than the difference between man and woman, seemingly. Again, this teaching is so timely. We are living in a culture where suddenly everything seems blurry regarding gender dysphoria and gender identity. We've talked a lot about that in the last few weeks, the few episodes we've covered. I think John Paul II was prophetic in giving us this teaching, because he reminds us that the knowledge of man passes through the sexual difference. And in fact, every man and woman ever born passes through, becomes being through sexual difference. There's no other way. Now, John Paul says, again in audience 10, under original unity, that the unity about which Genesis 2:24 speaks, the two will become one flesh, is without doubt the unity that's expressed and realized in the conjugal act. He's talking about the beauty of the marital embrace, the sexual embrace of man and wife. He says this biblical formulation is so extremely concise and simple, it indicates sex that's masculine and feminine as that characteristic of man, male and female, that allows them, when they become one flesh, to place their whole humanity at the same time under the blessing of fruitfulness. There's something very rich here. Again, in audience 10 from last time we met. We are under this auspice of this umbrella of sexuality, sex, which is masculine and feminine. It takes on form in us biologically as male and female, and we place our whole humanity, who we are, under the blessing of fruitfulness. Regardless of any sort of genetic anomaly or infertility or impotence, whatever might happen, our bodies are male and female, and our bodies have inscribed in them this call to become fruitful in some way, shape, or form. This forms a communion of persons. Now, John Paul, a little bit further down in audience number 10, this means reliving in some way man's original virginal value. This is kind of neat because we hear virgin and we think like one who hasn't had sex. But when he says virginal value of the human being, he's talking about this integrated whole person, not splintered by sin, not fractured, not objectifying another, but we experience in this giving and receiving in the beginning the virginal value of our body. It emerges from the mystery of our solitude before God in the midst of the world. The fact that they become one flesh in the beginning, one flesh, is a powerful bond established by the Creator, through which they discover their own humanity, in its original unity and in the duality of a mysterious reciprocal attraction. Okay, that again is the seed that God put into us, this longing to go forth, to burst forth, to blossom in fruitfulness by self-giving love. It's constitutive of every person. Now, John Paul here is about to leap off from the biological sign of sex into the great cosmic sign of what it's meant to be. He says in Audience 10, Section 2, sex, however, is something more than the mysterious power of human bodiliness. That's the foundation that we step off of, which acts, as it were, by virtue of instinct. Okay, that's what we have in common with the animal species on our planet, this sort of sexual instinct. But he says there's something more in human beings. On the level of man and in the reciprocal relationship of persons, sex expresses an ever new surpassing of the limit of man's solitude. In other words, this is our way out of ourselves, into the great mystery of the other. It lies within the makeup of his body and determines its original meaning. But this surpassing always implies in a certain way that one takes upon oneself the solitude of the body of the second I as one's own. In other words, the body is more than just sexual. The body is relational. In fact, written into the word sexual, a sexual being, is relationship. You can see here how this transcends just having marital intercourse or sex. In light of this, every human person, every vocation, through sexuality is called to relationality, to friendship, to communion. So that's under the umbrella of original unity. Now we look at the meaning of original nakedness in audience number 11 from John Paul II. This was delivered December 12th, 1979. John Paul said, one can say that the analysis of the first chapters of Genesis forces us in some way to reconstruct the constitutive elements of man's original experience. This is one of my favorite sections here. He says, when we speak of original human experiences, okay, what have we looked at so far? Original innocence. At our origin, God made us innocent, good, pure. Behold, it's very good, he said. Original solitude was our discovery that we're unique from all the animals. Original unity was another experience that said we're made for relationship when we look at the mystery of the other sex. Now original nakedness, which we'll unpack. He says, when we speak of original human experiences, we have in mind not so much their distance in time. Remember, we're looking at Genesis 1 and 2, thousands of years ago. We have in mind, rather, their foundational significance. And even right at the root word of significance there we have sign. The important thing, therefore, is not that these experiences belong to man's prehistory, to his theological prehistory, but that they are always at the root of every human experience. Wow. At the root of every human experience. Your experience, my experience. My children, my little ones, their experiences lies whispers, echoes of innocence, solitude, unity, and nakedness. Remember, this is a biological sign and experience from the beginning that we can reflect on at many levels, emotionally, spiritually, all the way up. So that the root of every human experience. That is true even though in the unfolding of ordinary human existence we pay little attention to these essential experiences. Innocence, solitude, unity, nakedness. They're so interwoven with the ordinary things of life, we generally do not realize their extraordinary character. Just having a little thought here. And again, we're in audience number 11, section 1. Summertime's coming here in the U.S., and we, of course, will be taking a family vacation. Many people go to the mountains or go to the sea, and these are epic moments for any human person to be on a vacation. For a person, a man, a woman, young or old, to get up early in the morning when there's no work to be done, so to speak, but there is great work to be done. What happens? We get our coffee, we go to the sea, we sit out on the porch, we watch the sunrise over the mountains. Wherever we are, we're getting an echo of the innocence, the beauty of the world on these vacations. We're experiencing them so often in those wee hours in solitude. And there's a sense of rest, of reflection. We feel a longing to become part of a relationship with God, with others when we're on vacations. And there's a stripping away, a kind of experience of nakedness, too, when we're on vacation. We just let the clutter go, and we kind of restore ourselves to what it means to be a person. So you can see, even just the idea of thinking about a vacation, we have echoes of these original experiences that have, again, extraordinary character. Praise God for these times when we can get away and take a break. I hope that whoever's tuning in right now has plans for a vacation, a summer getaway. If you're listening from the other side of the world, sorry, no break for you. Get back to work, my Australian friends. Section 2 of audience number 11. John Paul II is talking about, again, this experience that is so extraordinary in the beginning, that defines us. He says, without such an introductory reflection, these original experiences, it would be impossible to define the meaning of original nakedness and to take up the analysis of Genesis 2:25 that says, now both were naked, the man and his wife, but they did not feel shame. Okay, we needed that beginning to understand what's happening here in Genesis 1 and 2. The fact that they were naked but felt no shame, John Paul's going to expand on this. He says, at first sight, the introduction of this detail, apparently a secondary one, may seem unsuited and misplaced. One might think that this passage cannot compare with what the preceding verses speak about, and that it is in some way out of context. Such a judgment, however, cannot stand up to deeper analysis. So here's John Paul digging in. In fact, Genesis 2:25, they were naked without shame, presents one of the key elements of the original revelation, just as decisive as the other elements of this text, innocence, solitude, unity, that we've already allowed us to determine the meaning of man's original solitude and unity. To these one must add, as a third element, the meaning of original nakedness. It's clearly highlighted in this text in the first biblical sketch of anthropology. In other words, humanity, who we are. It's not something accidental, he says, and he writes this in italics. When John Paul II italicizes the text, that's his special little emphasis. He says this idea of original nakedness is not something accidental. He says, on the contrary, it's precisely the key for understanding it fully and completely. So this final meditation on our origin, this idea of original nakedness, is a key to unlock a total anthropology, a total study of who we are. Now, I know that we're running out of time already. We'll probably have to pick up here and then go into audience 12 next week. But let me say this. He's going to talk about shame a little bit. He says, essentially, what we see in original nakedness is almost like a call or a vocation. He already mentioned that there's a call to fruitfulness here, but he says original nakedness is when we can see clearly the other person, we see a task for us. Right? When Adam gazes upon Eve and Eve upon Adam, without any of the clutter of sin or agendas or any thoughts of use or threat or abuse, what we see is a task. I'm made for you. You're made for me. Now, as fallen men and women right now, us historical men and women, this task remains. When we look upon anybody in our walk through life, this day, I'm about to head out to lunch. When I encounter people, I'm going to see right there, though we're clothed in this period of historical man, I still see in every man and woman a task, a call to relationship, and an invitation to try to see past the agendas, the fear of being used or abused. I'm called as a task to go through that and to see inscribed in every man and woman the same vocation of Adam and Eve, to be fruitful, to multiply, to fill the earth. Every human person is an invitation into relationship. Mother Teresa once said it, that peace begins with a smile. It's true. That's the awakening of humanity. That's the awakening of a call to see the other person as an invitation to grow, to become fully alive and fully human. Okay, that was audience 11, and we'll talk up a little bit more of that next week. We'll talk about this experience of shame. We're on the border, as John Paul II, this is a boundary or border experience between original man and historical man, the fall. So stay tuned. This is going to be the dramatic part of the movie where it's like, dun, 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 what's going to happen when we talk about original sin. But keep the faith. The Lord is coming. The Lord has come, and the incarnation is real. Thanks for tuning in. I will put this on YouTube, and please do share it. Hopefully it's helpful. Please put comments, questions, thoughts, insights in the comments under the Facebook post here or on YouTube. Feel free to do that as well. You can learn more about our institute at tobinstitute.org, where we offer week-long retreats on this teaching, Theology of the Body. Thanks for tuning in, and God bless you.